Worst to first division contenders. What we're kicking on here today, Heist, and
Yeah.
we talked about the Ravens a lot and what the hell's going to happen with Lamar Jackson, but that would be a worst to first. Verem, you like that one by the way? Plus 200.
I do. I think they will be neck and neck with Cincinnati this year.
Yeah. Nice.
I think in fact when I picked the games, all of them like a maniac, I think I had them both winning 12 games. So I do like that bet. I think it's a good play. Look, Pittsburgh I do not think is winning that division, and Cleveland I do not think is going to have Deshaun Watson for a large portion of the season. It's just my guess. So if you feel that way, and I do, then you have two teams. And if the Ravens are healthy, it's very easy to make the case Baltimore's as good as Cincinnati. Now Cincinnati has all the playmakers, but both teams have star quarterbacks. The Ravens have players all over the field who can get the job done defensively. I do. I think Baltimore is going to be a very strong team this year.
Heist, they're plus 200. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I like it quite a bit. It's very top heavy in the AFC North. You have the Bengals as the slight favorites right now to win the division. And believe it or not, it was Cleveland for a while until some of this new potential rumors that Watson could be missing games started to trickle out. And that's still very much up in the air. But the Bengals are plus 180. And then the Ravens and Browns are tied at plus 200 with the Steelers all the way back at 10-1 to win that division. I just think so much went wrong for Baltimore, especially in the second half. Remember, the first half of the conversation was all about how they were probably winning some games that they shouldn't have been. But if you actually look a little bit closer, Lamar was throwing the ball relatively well. The offense was actually in a high gear. It was the defense that was having some struggles, and that's when the injuries on the defensive end started to hit. And they had dealt with all the injuries in their run game as well. But I know that there's a lot of people that don't like what Greg Roman does with this offense, where it's almost exclusively run, and they really just do not give a damn about taking some shots downfield. To me, I don't necessarily agree, because Lamar's MVP season, he was taking plenty of shots downfield. I think he led the NFL in touchdowns that year, if I'm not mistaken. But they're going to be healthy, and the defense is substantially improved. And now if you have somebody like Dobbins back to lead that backfield, have Edwards be able to mix in as well, it's just such a dynamic threat rushing the ball. So you were able to maintain a quality defense. The secondary is elite. And now you can take the ball away, plus control tempo on offense. I just think they're set up very nicely, and I do expect the Bengals to regress a little bit next year. So that's probably one of my favorites on the board for a worst to first team in 2022.
I absolutely love Lucas that he's got his own records. I personally have Baltimore at 12-5 is what he meant to write there, and the Bengals at 11-6. Baltimore to win the AFC at plus 1100 is his favorite championship conference championship value. Lucas, I don't know if you have your own podcast, but you should have your own podcast. You're an amazing football fan. Heist, you like where Lucas is cooking?
I do. Yeah, I think, again, it's about the opportunity that Baltimore has. They're going to have a slightly easier schedule after a terrible year last year and really starting to let things go. It's still a tough division. And just because the Steelers are all the way at the back end, I still think it's a quality defense. It's not going to be just two automatic wins. And I know that Matt went through the schedule earlier this year. I don't know if you had the Ravens sweeping that series, or maybe you had them falling on the road at Pittsburgh. Okay.
I think Pittsburgh's one of those teams, like, because of Tomlin, because of that defense, you're going to find yourself in a game if you're in that division with them, especially in Pittsburgh, where it's like 16-13 with 2 minutes to go in the game. You know, and you're sitting there pissed because they're +3 in the turnover. You know, I think I picked Pittsburgh to split with Baltimore, and I think I picked them to split with all three teams actually.
Yeah. It's a parity-filled division where you just expect a team that's been so consistently good and also very much ahead of the curve when it comes to making some of the analytical decisions, that it's hard for me to envision a scenario, even without Hollywood Brown, that the Ravens aren't going to be fairly competitive. And if we're expecting regression from the Bengals, then I think of all the different teams on the board to go from worst to first, Baltimore certainly makes the most amount of sense to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's look at the AFC West. Actually, we can combine them all here. The Broncos are plus 275, which is the third best odds in the AFC West. The Jaguars are plus 700, third best in the AFC South. And the East, in the NFC, the Commanders are plus 550, which is third best in the NFC East. Verm, who do you like the most here?
So, of those teams, but the Commanders, I think we're stretching a little bit, right? Because they didn't finish last; they finished third in that division. The Giants were an abject.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to check.
We don't count the Giants on this show.
The Giants aren't even a football team. Okay. So of those three teams, I'm going to surprise you guys. I think Jacksonville, because I don't think Washington's better than Dallas or Philadelphia. Washington certainly could be on the come up because you look at them and say, all right, the weapons are not bad. You know, you bring in Jahar Dotson, you've got Terry McLaurin, although he wasn't at OTAs, which you wonder if I could speak, where is his head at? What's he thinking? You have Antonio Gibson as well, Logan Thomas. But I don't love them to win the division. I think Philadelphia had the best offseason in football. I'm going to write about that substantially here in the next week or two. And then Dallas, say whatever you want about them, they still have the best quarterback in the division. They still have a lot of talent. The Broncos, we've talked on this show about this. Like, they might be the biggest wild card in the AFC. In fact, one of the Into the Futures before we brought Heiss on and we didn't get to it. Are they more likely to win 12 games or 8? And while I probably lean 12 because of the quarterbacks, Carm's going 8, and I almost went that route. The problem with Denver is I don't think they're better than Kansas City or the Chargers. I don't. I don't really even see a world where I could argue they're better than Kansas City. I just even though they moved on from Hill, like the Chiefs have won 6 divisions in a row and haven't lost to the Broncos since the Obama administration. Like, I need to see Denver do it. Jacksonville had a huge offseason in terms of acquisition of talent. Trevor Lawrence has talent, but was on a hilariously bad team last year, led by the worst coach I've ever seen in the NFL. That division is not great. Tennessee, I think, is going to come back to the pack this year. Houston is awful. Like, Indy's good, but is Indy so good that you don't think they could possibly be beaten out? Like, I would take Jacksonville, even though it would be a huge jump.
Jacksonville's a really interesting team that I probably didn't give enough merit to when these initial odds came out. But just the switch from Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson is
Worth
going
like 8
to
games.
it has to, right?
Insane.
And what'll be nice is that everything that we had talked about with Trevor Lawrence as far as upside and also safety, the high floor with the high ceiling, is going to start to showcase itself this year. And we've also seen, I'm not going out and saying that I would take Trevor Lawrence to win MVP, but there is a sample over the last few years of guys in their second year taking an enormous jump. With Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson over the last couple of years. Kyler Murray was another guy that took a massive step in his second year, eventually fell back to the pack in the second half of the year. But it's noticeable for a lot of these guys. Once they have that rookie season under their belt, they've taken a lot of those lumps. They've played a lot of games. It makes sense for Jacksonville in a very weak division, because here's the thing. Like, I know Matt Ryan has had a lot of longevity, and I very much like the Colts to be able to win this division and Ryan to have a very solid year. But if he goes down, now you're talking about a wide open race. And I know that Ryan has stayed healthy throughout most of his career, but how old is he now? 37 years old?
Yeah. Well, I'll quickly add this too, not to cut you off. Look, he's never missed any significant time in a season. So, like, okay, he stays upright. Let's go that route. They have Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman. I mean, if Jonathan Taylor misses a month, they got a problem. There's nobody on that offense that scares you. Also, who is their left tackle? Like, and I'm with you. I'm picking the Colts to win that division, but that is easily the worst division in that conference. Like, of these 3 teams, Denver's the best team easily. The problem for Denver is they're in the wrong division.
Right.
I mean, Denver could be really good and not even make the playoffs because they're just getting the crap beat out of them in the West. Whereas Jacksonville's nowhere near as good as Denver is. But you could just have a scenario here where Houston's terrible, Tennessee takes a big step back, Indy loses Jonathan Taylor for a month, and all of a sudden it's like, well, 9 games does it. And if you're Jacksonville, you're playing a horrible schedule. Like maybe that's enough. You're not going to Vegas betting your mortgage on any of these teams to win the division. But if you had to take a stab at one of them, yeah, I would probably go with Jacksonville.
Really quick, because I know we talked about this maybe a week or two ago. Carm, you were cruising over at Bears OTAs, and we had a conversation about the Broncos' schedule. First half, pretty good, and if they get off to a good start, they're going to need it. Because here's who they play in the second half of the year. They're at Tennessee. Again, we expect them to fall back a little bit. Play the Raiders, playoff team from a season ago. Nice cupcake against Carolina. But then listen to this. At Baltimore, home against Kansas City, home against Arizona, at Los Angeles, at Kansas City, and the Chargers. That's a murderer's row down the stretch of the season. A very, very difficult schedule for the Broncos. So they have to be leading the pack in the AFC West by the time that schedule rolls around, because they're going to get their asses kicked in some of these games. It's just inevitable, knowing the type of competition that they're going to play. They can handle it. Again, from a wildcard perspective, there's talent there, but it's going to be an adjustment. It is for so many of these guys. Tom Brady, aside, when he came to Tampa Bay. So the Broncos, you're right. Like, there's just so much up in the air in a very, very difficult division. The Jacksonville, I do think could surprise a lot of people this year. Verderam and I are in agreement on that.
Put me down for the Commanders, baby. They're going to run the football. Chase Young's going to come back healthy. You talk about schedules. A lot of commanding wins, which, by the way, don't sleep on the fact that the Commanders and Jacksonville are opening up against each other for this conversation. We'll get an early feel on who's out on the Jags versus Commanders, which will be another storyline, by the way, for us that I'll carry all the way through 2022. Not exactly super confident about the quarterback in Washington, but if you're making me make a pick, like I hate the Denver pick. Denver is there's just no way that's not happening. Come on.
Again, and not to belabor the point, but Denver's just in the wrong division.
Right.
If you put Denver in our division, they call me fine. Look, Russell Wilson, who I have down as a Hall of Famer when he retires. He's a Hall of Fame player. Like, he's the third best quarterback in that division. It's just going to be very difficult. The other thing with Denver, I really do wonder, and I've said this a few times on Twitter, and Bronco fans have just gone berserk. Vic Fangio's not there anymore. And I get he was an awful head coach. That guy matters on defense.
Sure does.
They are going to step back defensively, because when you look at them defensively, they have a couple of really good players. Chubb, Simmons, Surtain. And I'm not putting Gregory in there. I'm sorry, the man's 30 years old and has 16 career sacks. Okay. But you look at the rest of that group, it's not like it's a bunch of guys who you're like, man, they're just loaded like they were the year they won the Super Bowl, right? Like, you look at that defense, Fangio did a phenomenal job with that defense. That is not going to be the same group. And if Denver gets into games here where they've got to score 30 points all the time, yeah, I think that's going to be a problem. I don't think they're better equipped to score than Kansas City is, even without Tyreek Hill, than the Chargers are. Even the Raiders. Now, I think the Broncos will be better than the Raiders. So I think the Broncos defense are better than the Raiders. But could the Raiders get into a game where they outscore them? Yeah, they could. I look at Denver, and I think everybody's penciling in this idea that they're just going to be great defensively because they've been very good defensively. I think a lot of that has to do with Vic Fangio, because when you look at that depth chart, again, it's Chubb who gets hurt a lot, but when he's healthy, he's really good. Okay? The rest of that front, DJ Jones is fine. He's a run stuffer, but it's not like you're shaking in your boots. Their linebackers are not good. Surtain's excellent. Simmons is excellent. Their other corners are K'Wan Williams and Ronald Darby. Like, nobody in the AFC is having a stroke having to face that secondary. So I just think you're going to have games where you look at them and go, yeah, they're having a hard time stopping people. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think Fangio leaving, while it's going to benefit them overall, is going to really hurt them defensively.
You're preaching to the Chicago choir. Bears fans are very aware of what happened when Vic Fangio left town and what happened to that defense. Now, part of it is that the defense was getting old, but Fangio was fantastic when he was doing the defensive coordinator job for the Bears, and should have been promoted to head coach, by the way, rather than letting Matt Nagy run the ship. But I digress.